Vietnam, a nation steeped in tradition and history. A beautiful country today, its past has been characterized by war and colonization. Out of Vietnam's tumultuous 1930s, 40s, and 50s emerged a new religious movement. A new religion which blended native traditions like Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism with foreign ones like Catholicism. The new religion was called Caodaism, and it professed that all the world's religions were different manifestations of the same divine creator. Today, there are some 3 million practicing Caodaists in the world, many who have been spread across the globe as a result of the diaspora following the end of the Vietnamese-American War and the Fall of Saigon in 1975. Some of these Caodaists landed in the United States. This is their story. Born in Vietnam in 1926, Caodaism is a syncretic religion combining elements of the belief systems of Confucianism, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, Taoism, Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism. With some 3 million followers in Vietnam, Cao Dai is the third largest religion in the country, behind Buddhism and Catholicism. Cao Dai means high place, symbolic of the place where God dwells. Central to their teachings is the idea that all of the world's religions are different manifestations of the same God. According to the adept, Cao Dai exists to reconcile the differences in the world's religions in an effort to promote peace. One of the first Western accounts of the Cao Dai religion came from the British journalist and author Graham Greene, who wrote about his encounter with the religion in his memoirs, and also included a depiction of the faith in his novel, The Quiet American. Greene's account of Cao Dai is that of a bewildered outsider looking in. Of all France's allies in Indochina, the most astonishing are the Caodaists, members of a religious sect founded around 1920. Their capital, which they call the Holy See, is Tay Ninh, some 80 kilometers from Saigon, where their pope lives surrounded by cardinals of both sexes. At the entrance to the fantastic Technicolor Cathedral are hung the portraits of the 3 minor saints of the Caodaist religion: Dr. Sun Yat-sen, Trang Trinh, a primitive Vietnamese poet, and Victor Hugo, attired in the uniform of a member of the Académie Française, with a halo round his tricorn hat. In the nave of the cathedral, in the full Asiatic splendor of a Walt Disney fantasy, pastel dragons coil about the columns and pulpit. From every stained-glass window, the great eye of God follows one. An enormous serpent forms the papal throne, and high up under the arches are the effigies of the 3 major saints, Buddha, Confucius, and Christ, displaying his sacred heart. The literal translation of Cao Dai from the Vietnamese language means high place or high platform, and symbolizes the place from where God reigns over existence. Caodaists also refer to their religion as the third great universal amnesty of God. This is in reference to the 3 historical revelations of God. Cao Dai literally means high place, but it also means the name of God. Even the nickname when he communicated with the first followers, his name is Cao Dai. From then on, when this religion was established, they made the name Caodai. That's the short name. But the full name is Dai Dao Tam Ki Fo Do, or the Great Way of the Third Revelation and Salvation. Caodaists believe that God decided to reveal itself again through a third and final revelation by establishing the new religion of Caodai. Caodaists say that the third amnesty establishes a new path to salvation for humanity, and believe its core goal is the unity of all the religions of the world. Furthermore, they believe that God is the Father of all beings and the creator of all the world's religions. Caodaists contend that God has manifested itself at different times and places through various religions throughout history. Caodaists revere a pantheon of 9 deities. First among the many is the supreme being, Caodai, represented by the Eye of God present atop the traditional Caodai altar. On a second level below, there is Buddha, Lao Tzu, Confucius, the Chinese poet Li Taipei, and Guanyin, the Chinese bodhisattva of compassion, and the Chinese warrior Quan Kong. On the third level stands Jesus Christ. At a fourth level, Kuang Tai Kong represents the genus traditions of ancestor, hero, and spirit veneration. Below this pantheon of deities are the numerous saints of the religion: Victor Hugo, Sun Yat-sen, Descartes, Joan of Arc, Lenin, Shakespeare, and Louis Pasteur, among many others. The saints of Caodai aren't chosen through a lengthy canonization process as they are in the Roman Catholic tradition. Rather, they are spirits who have chosen to reveal themselves during Caodai seances to communicate the proper direction of the religion.
Well, it's clear that they didn't seek to abolish the use of the recognition of the Chinese deities. Quan Li, goddess of sea and mercy in China, was Quan Am in Vietnam, becomes Duc Phat Mao, Holy Mother, in Caodaism, and the idea of immortals, having immortals, heroic figures or culture heroes, patriotic heroes who become powerful spirits, is also Chinese in origin. It's Chinese Buddhism. And they do preserve that. And some of those immortals are Victor Hugo and Joan of Arc and so forth. So there are French loan blends, or blendings from French usage, saints and luminaries and so forth. So those are big features that they also incorporated. And of course there's the genieism, there's the animistic traditions of Vietnam, the genies, the forest spirits and so forth, and they recognize all of that. The worship of and veneration of ancestors, nature spirits and so forth is also part of Caodaism. So there is essentially an incorporation of the autochthonous or the indigenous traditions of Indochina in the form of animism with the introduced Buddhism from China that has the immortals and the deities. And on top of that, another layer of immortals, for the most part, who are of European origin. And as I understand, these include up to about the time of Winston Churchill, who was, I think, the last one that got added. But William Shakespeare is one of them, and that would fit for literary men. They would have Victor Hugo and William Shakespeare among their immortals. And of course, these immortals give messages. They speak, particularly Victor Hugo is very important. They speak with doctrinal messages, giving advice to the leaders of the 30s, 40s, would receive messages from Victor Hugo in terms of what needed to be done to better the movement and so forth. So it is what we call a syncretic tradition. It is a culturally blended tradition that consciously sought, and where leaders consciously sought to incorporate both colonial influences and indigenous influences, and at the same time embracing not just the world religions, but the local traditions such as Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism. It's a very hierarchical group, so the Confucian ethic is very strong. And all of those were essentially blended into one tradition and given a kind of permanency through the Constitution.
The diverse religious blendings of Caodaism can be seen in the iconography and design of the Tay Nin Holy See Temple, which incorporates elements of the world's great religions as well as local animist beliefs.
The Tay Nin Holy See itself, built with a huge number of Cambodian peasants, labor, the labor of a large number of Cambodians on it, was completed in 1935, is a construction exemplifying what we mean by syncretic belief in ritual. The church itself, or the temple, and I say it's church because it is basically designed along basilica architecture lines. It's the basic architecture is that of a Catholic basilica or cathedral, with 2 towers at the front, a nave down the middle with pulpits and galleries along the sides, and then an altar and apse at the very far end of the building, and with 2 Caodai luminaries, basically represented almost as saints with halos on the sides of the towers. And all of that harkens back to Catholic architecture, obviously the French influence evident here. But the design elements within the decorative elements that are present are Cambodian down the side, Cambodian Khmer arches, and of course the presence of a Hindu tower at the very back and a minaret from Islam in the middle, on top of which are both Shiva and Buddha. So we have again the co-optation, if you will, or the incorporation of all of these different religions into one system. There is in addition in the interior of the Holy See building are stained glasses with lotus blossoms on them, deist triangles with the eye of Caodai in the middle, resembling that found on your $1 bill. The use of, as I said, the pulpit. All of these features are clear blendings of Catholicism with Buddhism and native tradition. The building was called by Graham Greene, of course, the ugliest building in all of Asia, in the Quiet American, I think it was. It struck him. Other people have remarked on its aesthetic beauty and the skill of the crafting of the teak that's in it and so forth. Beautiful dragon columns, very Vietnamese animistic traditions represented down the interior of the nave. And then, of course, the use of an altar that has, instead of a crucifix, the big orb with the eye of Caodai on it, but with seats for dignitaries, much as you would see in a cathedral, with seats for the bishop, archbishop, and his clergy. So there are a good number of Catholic influences. And I might again, to say that some of the founders in that original group that Chiu, the prophet, had around him were Catholic. Pham Kong Tak was one of them, and of course he became the successor to the first pope of the movement when he died in 1935. Pham Kong Tak, the former Catholic, became the prophet of the movement, essentially, receiving the seances and the messages from the seances. He designed most of the Constitution, and he's responsible for the building up of Tai Ninh over 40 years. So the Catholic influence is very evident. They also have French Spiritist reinforcement there. French Spiritism was very popular, of course, in the 1920s. The Caodaist movement, Allan Kardec's teachings about getting in touch with the dead, and some of the techniques, including now beaker and basket is Vietnamese. That technique is telegrams from the dead using the spirit inside the basket is Vietnamese. But the use of the Ouija board with the Romanized script, the Quoc New Vietnamese letters, is clearly French. And so there's a blending of both the Chinese sand writing with the Vietnamese animistic beaker and basket technique, where the basket moves to the different letters, and then the Ouija board concept, which is French. All of those were used. They did use the planchette also from France, and the table tipping it's French. I was Spiritist. So the original seances with Chiu were with the table. He tapped out the letters of the Vietnamese alphabet, including the order that he refused to become Pope. It happened on Christmas Eve of 1926, I think. But those techniques those are all blended. You're used almost interchangeably, as I understand. And certainly the presence of symbolic elements like the architecture, the fact that all of the clergy have titles that come from Catholicism, practically all the clergy, priest, cardinal, archbishop, bishop, and pope. The pape, those are clearly French-derived, Catholic-derived. And to some degree the garb as well. The clerical garb reflects Catholic influence as well, the robes, the mitre-like headdress of the Pope, and so on. So there are a number of levels where it manifests itself. It's very syncretic.
By the mid-1930s, Caodai's organizational apparatus had spread from Tai Ninh to several villages throughout Indochina. During this period, the Caodaist province of Tai Ninh was highly autonomous. The Holy See administration levied taxes and administered hospitals, schools, orphanages, a number of business enterprises, and even had its own army and police force. The rising influence of Caodaism in the villages caught the notice of the French. who, concerned about its growing influence and power base, sought to restrain its activities in the north and center of the country. As a result, Caodaism became concentrated mostly in the south of Vietnam.
The religion grew very rapidly during the first 10 years, about 1927 to 1940, to the Japanese invasion. The Mekong Delta region quickly was won over to Caodaism, and Jane Warner has estimated several 100,000 people going over to become Tindo, or adepts of the sect, at that time the movement, based upon what seems to have been the chain reaction conversions of people as their landlords, their landholding elites joined the movement to become dignitaries. So the peasants on their estates, under their care, or working on their lands, also converted to follow that pattern, and then about several 100,000 joined. They eventually accumulated an army of about 3,000 men at Tai Ninh to back their hegemony, their control over the area. So much so powerful they were by the time of World War II that the French signed a deal with them to allow them to have their own operations in the Mekong, and they gave them military advisors and so forth. So they were a very powerful force in that region by the time of World War II.
MGM's 1958 film adaptation of Graham Greene's novel, The Quiet American, gave American audiences one of its first glimpses into Caodaism.
In 1926 by a Vietnamese civil servant. The entire concept of the cathedral, so the story went, had come to its founder in a dream. A Walt Disney fantasia of the East, dragons and snakes, no glass in the windows, and everywhere the eye of God upon you.
This footage was shot on location in Tay Ninh in 1957. The film's producers believed that they were shooting footage of a traditional Cao Dai religious celebration. However, they later found out that the event was actually a protest calling for the return of the Holy See's Hofap Pham Kong Thúc, who had been in exile in Cambodia since 1955. In an effort to consolidate his political power, South Vietnamese President Ngo Dinh Diem ordered attacks on the Holy See in 1955, forcing the Cao Dai leader to flee. Later, a truce was reached, and the Cao Dai military forces were consolidated into the South Vietnamese army. This infuriated the Viet Minh, who already despised the Caodaists for their alliance with the French. Viet Minh reprisal attacks resulted in the deaths of some 4,990 Cao Dai followers, including women and children. The communist takeover of South Vietnam by the North in 1975 saw the continued persecution of Cao Dai communities.
Yes, the fall of Saigon in 1975 was preceded by, of course, about a decade of Viet Minh attempts to get the Cao Dai to religion authorities, the Cao Dai dignitaries as they call them, to join their cause, and Caodaists would never do it. They had their own army, they had a lot of hegemony in the southern part of the country, and it appears to me, from all of the reading and interviewing that I've done, that they may have quite frankly underestimated the dire consequences that could fall upon them by not making deals with the Viet Minh. On the other hand, it was against their principles. They they remained largely, as I understand it, on the outskirts of the war in Vietnam with the United States and North Vietnam, and were marginalized. In 1975, when the Viet Minh came to power, the Communist Party essentially shut down the seances, the spirit sessions, meaning that since 1975, they can no longer elect their own officials according to the constitution of the sect at Tai Ninh, using spirit power, using spirit statements through a voice box or through the beaker and basket technique. And as a result of that, their clergy are dying off with no hope of student priests from 1975 being ordained. So they're not coming into higher ranks. There's been no pope since 1935 when Le Van Trung died, and the Hofap, the successor to him, was never really pope, who built the sect, died in Phnom Penh in 1975. And they have essentially, the government has been trying to strangle the group out of existence by shutting down the seances. In addition, the Tai Ninh temple is now staffed by government personnel, not exclusively and largely, It's a subject of much complaint among, as you know, among Tainists here in the United States as well as over there. And the movement of people in and out of Tainan who have doctrinal literature or coming from abroad and so forth is closely monitored. And people that I've talked to have been grilled pretty severely by Vietnamese authorities when they've tried to exit with literature in their hands related to Caodaism, or who were known to have been clergy there and that sort of thing.
We know that this is the most challenging period in the whole Caodaism history. Okay, even before under French colonial, the French oppressed the Vietnamese. We always have the Holy Council that guided us through difficult times. Now, without the presence of the Holy Council, this is the more challenging era in the Caodai history. The reason is that the one in Vietnam, the control, the Holy See, the Holy Council controlled by the government was the evil one. We can see that, we can say that, because it guided us to a wrong way. Okay, they tried to divide us in overseas. Whoever follow the Holy Council in Vietnam, they can get some benefit of being promoted to a higher ranking officer. Who don't follow them will be isolated or threatened. Okay, so to me, this is a more challenging era in our history.
Our family came here like a lot of other family that before 1975, before we lost the South Vietnam. My father was served for the South Vietnam Army, and then after we lost the country, he had to go to jail for about 5 years, and then after he get out from the jail, we moved to the south part of Vietnam. They call Barrier. Yeah, that's where my grandparents live. They live in a temple in Barrier. Yeah, the Caodai temple in Barrier, and that's where we lived there. And how we come here as by a special program of the United States government, that whoever served for South Vietnam Army they're gonna take us here by a special program. Yeah, that's how we get here. Yeah.
The fall of South Vietnam saw an influx of Vietnamese refugees to the United States. With the fall of Saigon, 130,000 Vietnamese were brought to the United States for resettlement. This first wave of immigration was followed by the exodus of boat people who escaped Vietnam illegally from 1975 to 1985. Conditions for those who escaped by boat were severe, and many were victims of theft, rape, and violence by pirates, while also having to languish in refugee camps as they waited for repatriation. An estimated 700,000 Vietnamese made their way to the United States as refugees. Another 200,000 arrived after 1980 as immigrants under programs like the Orderly Departure Program and the Humanitarian Operation. Today in the United States, there are more than 2 million Vietnamese Americans. Of these, around 20,000 to 30,000 are practicing Caodaists, although there are no exact numbers. Today, small Caodai communities exist throughout the United States. One of these communities exists in Wichita, Kansas, where the local Caodai community there has recently constructed a new temple modeled after the Great Divine Temple at the Holy See in Vietnam. The temple opened in the fall of 2010.
We started immigrated to the United States since 1975. And initially, Caodai follower, we get together and we create Caodai organization. Up until the 80s, most of the organization is for supporting each other. And then finally, starting in 1992, when we had our first official Giáo hội Thượng Mạng Thánh, he came here and he wanted to promote all of the organization to become a formal structure. By that time, the followers get together and establish the official religious committee with the similar structure to Vietnam, and we evolved from there. In 1992 in New Orleans, in a group of Caodai followers, they would like to build a temple similar to the one in Vietnam, and it took them 7 years to get things done. And it was very big, very impressive, very beautiful, become a landmark in New Orleans. And because of that, each of us in different states, our dream to have a similar temple. And one of the group like that is in Wichita here. So, and then Southern California, Santa Ana, those groups also complete the build of a Caodai temple a couple years ago. And then Houston followed that, Dallas, Fort Worth also followed that, and now we have the fifth city that complete building a beautiful Caodai temple.
The Dallas-Fort Worth area has an active Caodai community. In the fall of 2009, the Dallas-Fort Worth Caodai Temple was inaugurated in Garland, Texas, completed in the Tay-Nin style. A second larger temple is currently underway in Dallas. Known as the Mountain View Temple, some 15,000 square feet in size, this new temple will be able to accommodate 700 people and will be the largest replica of the Tay-Nin Holy See Temple in the United States. Exacting detail has gone into the temple's construction. Most of the sculptures and artwork adorning the temple were produced in Vietnam. Workers were flown in from Vietnam to oversee the temple's construction. Even the bricks used from the temple were custom made by a local firm to exactly match the color of the brick of the Tay-Nin Temple. While waiting for the construction of this new temple to become completed, the Mountain View Group has services in a building next door, which has been converted into a small temple.
There's 6 families start and buy a little land and with a house and a workshop. And we started because we are a small group of Caodai, and we are new to this country. Like we come here with nothing, only we have in our heart that we believe in what digital teach us, and we try to have a place to worship. It's all based on our heart. And every disciple, they believe in the teaching of the Caodai. Every single of us have a duty to spread the message of what Đức Chí Tôn teach to the world. And it's also very hard for us because this is a new culture and a new language for us. The basic teaching is just love, and love with unconditioned, no condition for love, and practice justice. And all the other teaching is in the holy message, holy book, and we just have to follow that. In the future, we're hoping soon Vietnamese will have the freedom of religion. Then we can practice the really what God teaching us in the way of practice, the way of the ritual. Right now, it's certain ritual that we cannot practice exactly like in the book for Vietnam. But over here, it's also hard too because we don't have all the book. We have some and some we're missing. And we practice as what we have. And this is a new environment for us too. And our thing is we have to not only adapt to the life, but to the life of the people live in the second country.
Caodaism comes close to being an ethnic identity. It's, they had a self-contained colony at Tai Ninh. The group has distinctive rituals, customs, and beliefs that are syncretic, that set them apart from Buddhists and Catholics from Vietnam. They have a very regulated lifestyle that is highly ascetic, world-rejecting, that involves 10 days of fasting from meat a month and so on, and a lot of different ins and outs that have to be known to be a good Caodaist that involve asceticism. And those are traditions that are at odds with dominant American society and culturally. And so for the children who are going through high school and so forth to maintain Tai Ninh orthodoxy, so to speak, or maintain Caodaist lifeways, it's quite a challenge. And they're losing, as I say, they're losing the language. That is an issue that the parents have commented on numerous times. Almost all the literature on Caodaism is in Vietnamese. It's in Quoc Nhu, the Vietnamese Romanized script. So this is a huge problem. And I know at present there's a huge effort, there seems to be a massive effort afoot to try to get things translated into English, but it just can't go apace. I mean, there is danger there for them in terms of a risk of losing some of the tradition or losing children to the tradition altogether. So those are concerns that some of them harken back to, go back to the political problems in Vietnam, but others just relate to the diaspora itself. And I think that those adaptational processes they're worrisome, for the parents. But to that, to a degree, that's the same situation for the Hmong from Laos with their animistic traditions, and any of these Indo-Chinese ethnic groups that have moved to the United States and are facing considerable cultural distance from the native traditions, and preserving that is always a challenge.
As you grow older, you're always learning, and that's like with a lot of religions though, there's a lot of different rules that you learn, and it helps you shape into a better person when you're older. So a lot of times when we were a lot younger, like the little kids' age, every Sunday we get together and we see a lot of cousins and family, and we're all like one big family versus one religion, so it builds a lot of family bonds.
I mean, when we were younger, we really didn't understand much, and I think our youth, we don't have that many around like the youth of our age, Right. So it's kind of difficult, but at the same time, I mean, everybody has a busy life schedule, and then, but they're so willing to teach us and trying to get us to learn more, even though, everybody is so busy. They only ask for our time, like, every couple hours a day. That's what they're trying to get us to do now, is to learn. Because their generation, they want us to pass it on from generation to generation.
Well, it's funny because the first thing they ask is, what is it? And we're like, oh, we worship the eye. Just a joke. And really, but because when you come in, you see the eye, and that's pretty much predominant for the religion. And you kind of explain, how, they ask, oh, are you Catholic? That's like the first thing they ask you before you tell them what religion you are. It's like, oh, are you Catholic or are you Buddhist? And you're like, no, we're kind of a little bit of everything. And that's like the easiest way to kind of explain it is like, well, like there's that one, and we kind of spread it all out, and just we are all a little bit of everything. Everybody's sort of right in their own little way, and then it makes them feel a little bit better about us too. So we're kind of bonding that level as well.
We need to preserve not only our religion but also our culture. So the temple is a place that gives us that opportunity to get together and do all these kind of activities that we wouldn't be able to do so effectively if we don't have the temple. And it's a place where all the members gather, pray to God together. What else do we do? You want to add in comments? All the youth come in and learn Vietnamese, the little ones, and we also learn about our religion because growing up in America, we don't have the opportunity to go to the original holy temple in Vietnam. We don't have the opportunity to explore and have a deeper understanding of our religion. Therefore, the temple gave us a place that we can come and learn from the older generation to understand the messages of God, of the Supreme Being trying to teach us, so that we can later on pass down to our later generations.
Basically, right now we try to post everything over the internet, and we're gonna let the younger read more. Even they can read Vietnamese, they can read English. We try to translate everything in English, so they understand more about Caodai. They understand more about their parents, their grandparents. Like me, the first day I came to Caodai, I had been live with my grandparents at a temple that they live all their life, and when I live with them, I learn a lot from them by the way they live, and then I learn from them by the way they live, and then I know more about Caodai when I grow, I get bigger, But before I didn't know anything about Caodai, I really saw how they live, They teach me how to be a good person. Yeah.
I'm so proud to be Caodai too, because it makes me feel very comfortable to go to any other church, temple, Buddha temple, or anywhere I go. I feel very comfortable because I see that founder or that representative in my church and my temple. So I don't know if you guys have that feeling too, but I feel very comfortable. And of course, because I'm the Caodai follower, I so definitely believe that Caodai should be the universal religion that will help the world to become more peaceful and to prevent any unnecessary war in the future.
The journalist and Vietnam historian Bernard Fall predicted that Caodaism was destined to disappear, believing that the movement would become but a footnote in the pages of history. Today, it appears that Fall's prognosis was false. While continuing to persist in Vietnam, Caodaism in the United States is witnessing something of a revival. With small Caodai communities throughout the U.S., Caodaism has established itself in its adopted country, where it continues to be a religion made up of many religions, born out of conflict, professing peace.